with the majority of the wires off the floor, I can actually look at putting carpeting in and also getting these universal brackets and sliders on these seats that I got a while back. Got the universal risers on the bottom of the seat. I'm actually fairly impressed with them. I've just got to put it in the car and make sure it's at the right height. Doesn't look too bad. Only thing I don't really like about these seats is they got a pretty big wall on the side here, just kind of going to be annoying to get in and out of, but I'll go ahead and give it a test here. Yep. I'd pretty much say this is the perfect height. I've got to obviously trim out the sound deadening material under the brackets themselves, but yeah, I'm going to call this a win. Being in the actual driver's position of this car for the first time, it really shows how much of a cave these interiors were from the 30s, just because the windows and the windshield are so small. I almost like the really small windows because it'd make it really hard to see from the outside like who's actually driving the car, which I like. Plan for the rest of the interior is to just do everything in black, like cut out my own door cards, just find any piece of cloth to use as a headliner, because if it's black then you won't be able to see how bad it is. Only thing that might have to change is this brake pedal is kind of pointed to the left, so I kind of almost have to like cross my right leg to get over to it here, but that should be easy enough to fix. I thought I'd just show how much of a mess my garage is and also what it looks like from the driver's seat. I just love seeing the hood ornament and the tops of the headlights there. The suicide door here. It's pretty cool. Getting in and out of this car is kind of a different story. I think it'll get a lot better once I actually have the skirts down there and I can step on them. But right now it's like, I gotta crawl out of that seat with how high these damn walls are. At this point, I'm pretty much done with all the big ticket items under the hood, so I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to watch me struggle to put the hood on by myself. Of course, by doing this, I'm probably gonna eat my words and have to take it off again. That's for some stupid reason, but. Little fun fact, the original engine that would have came with this car in 35 was the legendary Stovebolt 6. A 206 cubic inch inline six engine, first introduced in 1929. It earned that nickname because of the slotted bolts used on the engine block looked exactly like the cheap hardware used to assemble household wood burning stoves. It pushed out a whopping 74 horsepower in 1935. Just getting the hood on totally changes the look of the car. Pretty cool. You can see just by looking down that this side needs to get raised up a little bit. Because you see, if I just grab the fender here and lift up, it pushes into the right spot. You can see the gap I was talking about. It's not awful. It's probably like 1.5 inches. But that little rod is supposed to go into that housing, just like it is at the front here. So just got to figure out a way to make this whole thing kind of tilt up. I think it's finally time to break this thing in. Can't say I'm not nervous about this whole process. I'm going to go ahead and fill the fuel bowls on the carburetor, and then hopefully that'll buy me enough time for the fuel to come from the tank all the way up the hard line. As soon as I get it started, I'll get the timing to where I want it, and then rev it up to 2,000 and let it go for 20 minutes. Worst case scenario is my camshaft turns into a hot dog, or it could overheat, which is unfortunately pretty likely considering the half-assery I did on the cooling system, but we'll hope for the best. This is the type of job you probably want to do with 2 people, since you need to be monitoring the temperature, oil pressure, if anything is caught in the engine while your wiring's tucked away. and also running around the car making sure there aren't any leaks anywhere. With just me doing this, I'm gonna be running around a lot for the next 20 minutes. Well, my attempts to break in the car went fairly poorly today for a number of reasons. The first is something weird is going on with the power steering pump because after you move the wheel a certain distance, I completely lost control of the wheel and it started jerking around violently. So there's that. The timing also slightly concerns me. Even though it's running, I just feel like I'm still not at the right spot, and it's hard for me to really dial it in because I can't get the engine to idle for a long time without something else going wrong. There's also a mysterious smoke that just starts coming from all over the engine after it runs for about 20 seconds. So that's what we like to see as well. I don't know if it's just residue or spider piss or oil or power steering fluid. It's just a mysterious furling smoke with no clear source. In addition, what I thought was the park position here is definitely not. This wheel on the driver's side was spinning forward when I had it running. So there's that. It's also hot as hell out here, which you might be able to tell from my costume change. I'm just really having a great time. It's days like these where you really just gotta look at the bright side of things. And one of those was my fuel system seems to be working perfectly. Fuel came up from the hard line in no time. And along with that, there are no leaks under this car at all. So apparently I did something right when I was plumbing up the fuel and transmission line. One of the other things that went wrong that I didn't mention in my rant was there's a pretty terrible ticking noise coming from the passenger side cylinder head. It's pretty obvious in the video, and it did not get better with time as I continued to try to start the engine. I think I'm just gonna walk away for tonight, maybe take a few days, mull things over in my head, and then we'll start by troubleshooting what this mysterious ticking noise is. And I'm just going to take that belt off the power steering pump just to not have to deal with my steering wheel getting a mind of its own while I'm trying to break the engine in, and I can troubleshoot that later. Just solving this puzzle one piece at a time is the best I can do. So I got zero usable footage from troubleshooting, so prepare for death by voiceover. For context, I got this small block Chevy as a part of the package deal that came with the car. Supposedly, the gentleman before me had rebuilt the engine, but who knows if it was a backyard mechanic job or if it actually came from a machine shop, because I got no receipts besides like a crumpled up data sheet for the camshaft that was supposedly in the engine. But I really had no way to verify that that cam was actually what the paper said it was. As for the mysterious ticking, there's a chance I could have messed up the math for the valve train geometry when I switched those old iron heads for the aluminum ones. But I did all my math based on the sheet I was given with the max valve lift, spring capability, valve height, push rod length, and rocker arm ratio. But again, there's a chance that that camshaft specification paper that I got was not for the cam that's actually in the engine, which would throw everything off. The ticking noises did not get better as I continued attempting to start the engine. There was eventually what would be the final time I got it started, and that one ended with it cutting out pretty suddenly. There weren't any catastrophic noises besides the ticking, and the engine would still turn over with the starter, but I could never get it started again. It seemed like I had lost compression somehow. At that point, I knew there was no way this engine was going to be fixed without pulling it out of the car and disassembling it with my detective hat on. It would be far cheaper and faster for me to start looking at alternative small block Chevys, as the car was already perfectly set up for one. I would just need to swap it in. For me, the moral of the story is to be cautious about trusting others' engine work, especially if there aren't any receipts. I could have saved myself a lot of time, pain, and resources if I had just disassembled it myself, checked out the measurements before slapping it in the car and just hoping it would run. So if you haven't disassembled and reassembled your car at least 3 times before you actually get to drive it, you haven't earned the car yet. I have suspicions that the cylinder head valve heights possibly weren't at the specs that I thought they were. Don't really want to wait that long to try messing with this engine anymore, and I also don't want to cause permanent damage to this engine by continuing to just try to run it. So we're gonna push this off for another day, and then maybe this engine will come back in a different car in the future. So I did what any rational person would do, and I went on Facebook Marketplace and bought another mystery small block for a triple-digit amount of money. I also snagged a Buick 350 out of a 68 Skylark just for kicks and giggles as well. But this is the one that supposedly runs. In the midst of the engine swap, I also installed this universal battery tray on the firewall. I originally wanted to try to keep the firewall as clean as possible, but there just simply wasn't enough space to put the battery anywhere, and I needed it to stop living in the passenger's footwell. I proceeded to conduct the world's fastest engine swap, and I buttoned it up just enough to where I could hear it run just for at least a few seconds. With that huge backfire out of the carburetor, I knew I was on the wrong stroke of the piston when I set it to top dead center using a borescope. So I pulled the distributor out, rotated the crank 360 degrees, then threw the distributor back in, and then I prayed to God. Not bad for the Facebook Marketplace special. Doesn't look like anything's on fucking fire yet. And with that happy outcome, I'm going to end this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.